Hello there, welcome to another Valkyria Chronicles episode, and our heroes, Alicia and Welkin, having escaped the Imperial forces around in the part of Clothing that they were in anyway. They got out, they found a cabin in the woods, they stayed the night. Following day, they hear the sound of gunfire and sort of head towards the sound of the guns. That's where this battle commences. So the top flag is essentially Alicia and Welkin, and the rest of the squad you pick and set up, deploy. But essentially they're going to be defensive at the start because there's fairly heavy pressure. There's a couple of tanks on the enemy side, there's a ton of lancers, and they have more command points and they get a lot of reinforcements, the constant stream of reinforcements. And you have to keep Alicia and Welkin alive. So, the northern side, though, is a bit of a distraction in the sense that you can take out the entire Imperial force on the northern side, but you can't seem to do anything about the gun that's harassing the Gallian base, and therefore, because you can not take out the gun, and the troopers that are protecting the gun generally won't interact with you if you don't go inside the palisade fence. You can see the edge of the palisade fence on the map. There's a couple of guys outside the palisade fence. There's one of them, you can see the scout at the edge of the woods near Alicia and Welkin, and there's another one to the north between the cabin and the palisade fence. And if you don't go inside the palisade fence, the guys inside don't come out as far as I can tell, at least not initially. And you can basically march Welkin and Alicia past. There are snipers on the opposite side, so you don't want to leave them under the guns of the snipers, and you do want to get them, really want to get Welkin to the rest of the squad, so as to get the tank back in action. You just need to get Alicia out of the line of fire, and you don't really need to spend command points, any further command points on her. She's not going to make a huge difference to the remainder of the battle. So initially, I concentrate on getting Welkin back in contact with the rest of the squad. So we just get you'll need Alicia. The support is needed at the start, and you've got to be careful of moving around here. There are mines littered at the edge of the paths, and there are mines near the entrances, particularly the other two entrances. The big wide open entrance here, the mines are fairly obvious, and it's relatively clear. But you don't need to go in. The other two entrances have mines at the entrance. But the key thing is to keep them out of the scope of the snipers. The guys inside, as far as, so far in my cases anyway, they haven't attempted to come out. But I didn't hang around here either. I just threw a few grenades over the wall and moved on. In earlier attempts, I did clear them out. We managed to clear them out completely. And it's not that difficult to do, especially if you weaken the shock troopers initially with grenades. But it turns out you can do nothing about the camouflaged gun emplacement, and I think it's just a waste of action points if you can't do anything about the gun emplacement. So you might as well just move past here and get Welkin as soon as you can to the Edelweiss, because the sooner he's in the Edelweiss, the sooner you can bring the Edelweiss into action, and it's very effective at breaking up the Imperial attack, which is the biggest problem we are contending with at the beginning of the battle. The Imperians are putting the Gallian troops under pretty heavy pressure, and the lack of having the tank in action actually makes a big difference. Just strikes me as that the game really, the kind of things that the writers have chosen to put in and take out, but there's no light machine guns. There's no squad support weapons in this game. The tanks have heavy machine guns mounted on the tanks as coaxial mounts. Although they're not terribly effective on the offense, but they're fairly deadly on the defense, because they don't fire too many bullets on the defense even when they activate. But the bullets they do fire, the rounds they fire, do a lot of damage, and I'm after setting off the mine here and going to really damage Welkin, but he survives, which is fortunate, because otherwise I'd have to start again, and it's just a bit of a pain. You were starting quite early on though. But once you get Welkin into the tank, he's safe enough. The Tank does come under a lot of pressure at the start because they do have quite a lot of Lancer units, and they also have tanks of their own, and they do prioritize. They make considerable amount of effort to actually try and take out the Edelweiss. No, I don't want to throw a hand grenade at Welkin. We want to get a first aid boost, is perfect, so that'll get him back to full health. So we spend our bottle of Ragnade and we have Welkin back at full health, and Alicia is actually a bit shot up. And we've only got 2 command points left. Now I chose not to spend... Now the 2 command points would have been enough to get Welkin back to the tank. But I chose not to spend them that way. I chose to bring these two... mostly I wanted to put them in undercover, so that they were actually taking advantage of the sandbags. Because the Imperial troops will attack as soon as it's their turn. The mortar is falling between the 2 lines, and at the initial couple of turns it kind of sticks to between the 2 lines, but it will eventually start to move in over the Galleon camp. So it's kind of imperative that you are in a position to advance as well fairly early. The first, you can get the troops, you can get Rosie and Silas down to the first line of sandbags as well, but down there they're going to come under fire every turn from the enemy tank, and the shock troopers are going to start focusing on them as well, and they'll focus on one character first and the other character second, so you're going to lose characters if you do that before you will have the opportunity to get reinforcements up to them, and particularly before you have the opportunity to get the tank up to them. Whereas if you get the tank in there, as long as you have the engineering capacity to keep the tank alive, the enemy will prioritize fire on the tank, and the tank will provide shelter for shock troopers and anybody else that you bring up into the forward location. The Imperials also have quite a lot of command points in this scenario, and they tend to make aggressive use of most of them. They do they have a constant amount of reinforcements they seem to bring on. So they replace losses pretty much effectively, and they're close enough to their forward base that the losses come into the combat more or less immediately. So I presume they have the same limits, like that if they don't take losses, they don't bring on the reinforcements. It's just like it applies to the Galleon troops. But it does mean that you're under fairly heavy pressure from the get-go, and the pressure won't let up until you can actually take out fairly large numbers or substantial numbers of Galleon troops. So we have 3 Lancers right up there, and they're supported at this point by 2 or 3 shock troopers, and there's a couple of snipers further back, and I think there's more Lancers coming on. So it is a serious enough threat to the Edelweiss unless you can cut down the numbers fairly quickly at the beginning there. Wilkins lucky to survive the 2 snipers, and it was just as well that I managed to heal him up to full health. I don't think he would have done so otherwise. Therefore, I could have regretted, and in the normal course of events, I would probably be better off leaving Silas and Rosie standing as they were and just relying on their own personal innate toughness to ride out the first phase of the battle and actually use the extra 2 movement points, 2 command points to bring Welkin up to the Galleon base, so that you could take charge of the tank at the start of the next Galleon turn. So Salinas is taking a bit of a beating there, but we are getting the other advantage, of course, of having people close together is you do get some mutual support in defensive fires and stuff like that when the enemy advance, and it triggers. Salinas is after taking the direct brunt of that Lancer's round, and I think he was deliberately fired at Salinas that he decided that they were too far away to fire the Edelweiss, and there is the artillery piece going off, but the artillery piece is more of a nuisance. You just sort of stay out of the line of effect, and generally stay out of the line of effect with infantry. It doesn't seem to phase the Edelweiss too much if the Edelweiss is caught in the area of effect, or at least partially caught in the area of effect. So now it's back around to the Galleon turn. So I'm going to bring forward my sniper. Ranges are relatively short, and I thought the sniper is going to be relatively effective in this particular scenario, and I brought a sniper on, I brought a lancer. I don't think I needed more than one lancer. I think in most scenarios, I think sometimes I use two, but in a lot of scenarios, sort of one lancer is perfectly fine. So we've one sniper out of the way. I don't think I have a clear line of sight of the other one. I could go down to the bridge to get a clear line of sight of the other sniper, but I'm not sure if it's worth the action points to do it. So Welkin is on pretty low health, so the first thing I'm going to do with him is take out a bottle of the Ragnade and juice him up a bit so he gets a bit healthier. His own cure light wounds, complete with glowy effects, and now I have to be careful along this path. There are quite a few, there's at least 3 landmines. There's one there visible by the rock at the water's edge, there's another one over by the end of the log, and I think there's another one at the end of the grass, so I've got to avoid those. And you don't have to be right on top of them, you can just get close enough and they'll trigger, although you have to be fairly close with the trigger. There's one of them here near the log as well, or near the board crossing. You can't go too far down the wrong side of the stream because it just blocks you off, and it blocks you here at the rope bridge at the end of where the rope bridge is. However, I don't quite have the movement points to get there, so I'm going to spend another action point to get Welkin up, and then I can rejoin with the main force. And once I rejoin with the main force, you have a kind of a reunion scene with Hisara, and she explains the situation, and you get Welkin back into the Edelweiss, and now the Edelweiss is available for actual combat. It's serviceable. You can move, you can fire, and all the rest of it. Although I've always thought, like, you know, a 2-man crew on a tank that size is just ridiculously small. They would have been better off with a larger crew. It's a couple of things. There's some oddities in the decision making. Even for, I know it's a kind of a pseudo World War II. The tanks are kind of World War II. Lancers, of course, are complete. I mean, they're essentially anti-tank missiles, but it's a technology that was sort of in its infancy at the beginning of World War II. But there's no squad heavy weapons. There's no machine guns. There's no effective artillery. There's no machine guns. The Imperians apply artillery, alright, but it generally has only a nuisance, whereas in the actual World War II and World War I, artillery was an utterly terrifying weapon. I mean, obviously in World War I, artillery kind of dominated the battlefield, but the problem in World War I, of course, was they had really no effective fire control. They were relying on landlines and observers to communicate back to the artillery. I think by the late war they were using observation balloons and radio communications and airplanes and radio communications to observe fall of shot and send information back to the artillery, but it was a slow enough process because the airplane radio operator had to use Morse, and quite often I'm not too sure whether, not too sure whether there was a separate radio operator on the planes, or I can't remember now. Like, it's a long time since I sort of read up and looked up that kind of stuff. But this is, all the battles in this game are simple, straightforward kind of infantry engagements, and with tanks. It's a bit odd, really. In some respects, it's quite odd, because they have machine guns. There's vehicle-mounted machine guns, but there's no, the equivalent of a light machine gun. There's no Bren gunner or a Spandau gunner or something like that on each of the the teams. So there's no light squad support machine guns where you could, what do they call them? Squad assault weapons. Where you could lay down a heavy firepower and stop basically movement along a particular direction or axis, because you're going to charge into machine gun, or at least you're not going to do it with relatively small numbers of people, and certainly not without armoured support, some kind of vehicle that's immune to the machine gun effects. The Edelweiss is in the line of fire of the incoming artillery round, but it didn't seem to affect it much. You'll see at the end of the the enemy phase. So the enemies have reinforcements arriving. They're doing activity over by the artillery. Alicia is sufficiently far forward, I think, that she's safe. She wasn't fired on for the rest of the scenario. And the enemy tank advances, which again, I think it was scripted. It's scripted to avoid the damaged sandbag positions, because obviously the enemy troops would use them for cover if they had the opportunity, but they've been destroyed by grenades and mortar fire and stuff like that. So there's one of the enemy units across the river moving now. I don't know whether he would be in a position to shoot. Alicia doesn't do so anyway, so he mustn't be, not straight away. But you have, what, 4 Lancers. There's 3 Lancers out the field. There's another Lancer back at the base after arriving as a reinforcement. So, and we have a sniper active back at the base as well. Rosie's just dodged a shot from the sniper. The sniper actually is a character to be wary of, because they could effectively take out one of the troopers, certainly with a 2-shot hit, although they could probably only do 1 shot in a turn, in a round or whatever. I've not seen, that's a miss there, I've not seen Imperial snipers doing more than 1 fire phase per turn. Poor Salinas is after taking a tank round on the face, I think, from the light tank. And they've only got 1 action point remaining, and then the enemy gun fires, and that's an incoming shot in the vicinity of the Edelweiss, but it doesn't do serious additional injury, I think, other than what was done earlier on by the Lancers. So we have a man down. I need to get the Edelweiss fixed up, because I think it's got very little movement. Yes, the tracks are nearly completely destroyed. So to get a decent amount of movement on the tank, I need to get the tracks back up and running, and we need to bring the engineer forward. And this is what I'm saying about the tanks. Like, if I didn't have the Edelweiss to provide cover, around the time I was getting within a few feet or a meter or 2 of the Edelweiss's back, I'd have been completely exposed with a tank machine gun, and multiple rounds would build up very, very quickly. In fact, Ramsey had fairly good health until she reached the tank, and when she was leaving, going down to medic Salinas, that she loses the remainder of her health points, and she's gone. She's out of the fight now, and I'm going to have to replace her with another one if I want to retain the services with engineer. So now I need to advance the Edelweiss. The incoming artillery round is going to drop more or less the same location. I'm not particularly too worried about whether the Edelweiss is in or out of that location, but I do want it to provide cover for advancing troops, and I do want to take out that tank if I can possibly manage it. Although the 2 Lancers together is also a very tempting mortar target. Now I thought I could get the engine from here, but the reticles are white when I pointed over the radiator. Therefore I don't have any kind of a clean shot, so I shoot at the back of the turret. That gives me a clean shot, and will make it easy for Largo to fire a subsequent shot, because I have a bit more flexibility. It only costs me 1 command point, and he might even manage to take it out 1 shot if he gets a decent enough hit and a high enough roll. And we fire, and let's see how we do. He doesn't quite manage it, but he is an easy 1 shot remain, and okay, that's 2 action points, and I could have done it possibly with 1 shot from the Edelweiss. But if I did it with 1 shot, it'd be worth it. Now, I don't know if I actually fire the second shot. I've only got 3 command points left, and I do want to get Ramsey back into action, or at least evacuated, so that I can replace her. Yeah, fire the other shot, because it's well worth it in the tank out of the action. And that clears the way. I can now use the Edelweiss's cover to advance troops up behind it, which is a much safer location than leaving them out in the open at the moment. So Rosie's standing at the open, for instance, and she'd be much better off behind or beside the Edelweiss, with the Edelweiss between her and enemy troops. And these guys still make a very nice area effect targets, so we're going to toss a grenade in behind them. I probably would have needed to be a little bit further forward to actually be able to toss the grenade between them, which would have been actually even better. I think it would have had a better effect. Now I just leave her behind so that she doesn't have a direct line of sight. The Edelweiss is blocking incoming fire. If people want to move around and activate aggro from the Edelweiss, and the Edelweiss will get the opportunity to shoot back at them. So we now have Ramsey evacuated. Medic is coming on board, and we're able to advance the shock trooper forward up to beside where Rosie is. Now again, it's one of these mistakes that I make quite often, which is wasting movement by moving too close to the cover so that I don't have a line of sight for the shots. It's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another. They're all roughly the same, but I get supporting fire from the Edelweiss, and with the advantage of the supporting fire is I'm actually able to finish off the Lancer, whereas I don't know if the Hannes would have managed to do it on his own. So having multiple units close together so that they trigger supporting fire is actually very, very useful. Well worth doing, and I'm trying to arrange it as often as possible in the game. And it's now back around to the Imperial section. I will continue with part 2 in a subsequent video. So if you enjoyed this video, please press like and share. Feel free to comment. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. I will catch you all again soon. Bye for now.